welcome to Stephen University. We are in the Postgrad course. Like most Postgrad courses, not everybody that attended university has carried on with it. I think that's fair, isn't it? Only a percentage of people who go to university go to Postgrad. The numbers of this podcast have steadily declined since we finished the show.
Like most postgrads, we're talking about top 5 episodes.
Let's do universe. No, welcome everyone. We are today tackling the big question of our favourite episodes of Steven Universe. And the way we've decided to structure this, for those of you who are either new on this episode, which if you are, by the way, there's a whole 200 odd episodes of this podcast you can go back and listen to, where we review individual episodes of the show and other stuff. The most similar episode to this we've done, we did our top 5 characters, I think, and then we tried to rank our favourite 5 songs.
Amazingly, I'd almost want to go back to the top 5 characters and look at it again after doing this exercise, because I was like, well, there are some consistent patterns here.
Right, interesting. That is interesting. So I, historically, for those who aren't aware, I have tried to math these. I've tried to be I've overthought them. I've tried to bring it down to well, this episode represents this thing, so it gets points in this category, but not this category, or not episodes, but with the things we did. I actually gave the categories, the characters categories with character traits in them, and rated them out of 10 in each one, and then sort of used that to do maths to sort of reshape. It was a terrible idea. It took way too much time, and I don't think it yielded much different results than if I'd just gone, here they are. So this time I very specifically have just gone with my heart a bit and just gone, okay, no, these are my favourite episodes, because that is it, it's favourite episodes. Doesn't necessarily mean best. I know that some of the episodes in my list, there are technically maybe better episodes on paper than these, but it's not just about that, it's about my personal preferences as well included. So obviously if you feel differently, that's fine. That's not a problem.
That's very key. I love that. I said it on the last one. I love that distinction. Favourite is what connects with you, what speaks to your heart and all that sort of stuff. Best is objectively, technically the best or something like that. I'm with you. So your approach was just gut instinct.
Yeah, I mean, I made a list of. I made a list of I sort of came. I just narrowed it down. So I started with 20 or 30 episodes that I liked. I just write down the episodes you remember liking, and I just did that. And then I scanned the list of episode titles just in case there was anything I missed or forgotten about, and added 1 or 2 more. And then I just started narrowing it down, and I just started eliminating them. Because there was there's at least 5 episodes in this list better than this one that could go, and I narrowed it down to 10. And then I narrowed it down to 5. So I do have 5 honourable mentions, which were the 5 I had before I cut it. If that makes sense. I
don't have access to it. I think I've got that somewhere, because I did a very similar approach. I kind of, because it's, and I found it, I'll be honest, I found it quite challenging, and that's why I sort of gave a caveat last week of one choice in particular I know wasn't an episode I was raving about at the time. Because what's interesting for me is a lot of these episodes I've only seen the once, and it's very hard for me personally to not be influenced by the discussion. Case in point, it's not on my list. I would guess it's potentially on yours, but case in point, if I'd have just watched the show, I probably... What on earth was that noise? I don't know if only I could hear that.
That was the guy with the lawnmower going past again, Chris. Now, we've had this
He's back!
So, the thing is, he's back, but Lawnmower Man's from a different podcast. So, we've been recording, for those listening, we've been recording a different podcast that we're going to start launching on this channel at some point in the next, I'd say, month or 2. We're quite excited about it. We'll tease it a bit there, and we'll leave it at that.
I think by this point it's pretty obvious, but carry on.
Yeah, it might be. That's fine. We'll just continue.
But no, because I imagine the people that have a good guess are probably the people that are excited about the potential. So we can leave it there.
So, and it's we've been recording that for weeks and weeks and weeks. We've been doing it for we've recorded 7 or 8 of them now. So we've been doing it for at least 2.5 months, and one of the early episodes, that lawnmower sound kept coming past while we were recording. So it's weird, because it's like a running joke from a different podcast that hasn't aired yet is now in this podcast that's airing this week. It's very confusing. Anyway, back to what you were saying, Chris. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. So a lot of these I've only watched once, and also like it's hard not to be influenced by the discussion. So, for example, an episode that if I'd have just watched through the episodes, an episode I probably wouldn't particularly remember or think about in terms of favourites, bests, etc., is Mindful Education. Because it didn't connect with me the way it connected with you. But I am very aware of why and agree with why and can see why it connected with you. So if someone were to say to me, name some top episodes of Steven Universe, I would name Mindful Education. So it was quite a challenge. But what made me laugh was I took a similar approach to you. I was like, right, well, write down instinctive episodes and then then look at the list and write down some others. And it was really funny because I had this list. I think like you was like 15 or so episodes. And I was like, right, pull out the ones that you categorically know are your favourites and that there's no debating. And then once you've got them, fill out the other spaces by analysing the list and maybe rewatching, etc. So I'm like, right, instinctively, my favourites. And I pulled out some episodes and then I looked and I was like, oh, I've pulled out 5 episodes. I guess those 5 are my episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense. Yeah, I just think you've got to sort of... the only way to do this is on instinct, because it's favourite. And there are so many great episodes of this show. Like, are there wrong answers? I think in your opinion, there might be only one wrong answer.
But even then, if someone particularly likes cats... I guess it's fine.
And fingers, and that combination.
Because I got 2. I got 3 that I think might appear on other people's, and then my first 2, I'm like, I imagine I'm the only one, but we shall see. Obviously, yeah. So we've got data from.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I created a survey that allowed our listeners to rate episodes in as many as they like. So they could, they could just give us their top 5, and that would help nudge those 5 up the list. Or they could give us their entire 178. Because to clarify the rules as well, where any episode where it's 2 parts, but both parts have the same title, that's counted as 1. So something like the Wanted arc, those are 4 separate episodes because they had 4 separate titles.
Whereas something like Change Your Mind would count as one episode because it has 1 title.
Yeah, and same with Bismuth. And a couple of others that had that sort of through line. We don't include the movie because it's hard to compare a full feature-length movie, to a 10-minute episode. So the movie is not included, but Future is, because those, as far as I'm concerned, are episodes of Steven Universe. So there you go. Those are the rules. What we do is we gave the survey. Anyone could vote as many or can I just say to the 20% or whatever it was of people that went to the trouble of giving us their entire list, top to bottom.
Well done. Because that was a clunky as fuck website to be using for just, not in general, but for this in particular where you had to move stuff about and order it. So anyone that did that, fair play to you.
Yeah, look, the SurveyMonkey thing was the best of a bad lot. Because we,
I was
in the Discord asking people like at the time for like feedback on like what website might be able to do a survey where there's 178 potential responses, like in order them, and everyone was like, most websites like limited it at like 50 potential answers or 100. When we found SurveyMonkey, like it had all sorts of rifle problems of its own. So yeah, it's a reasonable service. I'm a little frustrated at the way they've at the end now want to actually download the data and like play with the data to get loads of stuff, stats out of it. I have to upgrade and pay them a ton of money to do that. So I refuse to, because I feel like they should put that up front when you're making a survey. Hey, when you want the data for this, you're going to have to pay. And I would have used a different website. So out of spite, I'm not paying them, and that means we don't get as much data out of it as we want. But we will be going through the top 5 of the audience along with our top 5. So I'll say, like Chris or I'll say one of our 5th favorite. Then the other one will go, and then we'll get the audience's 5th favorite based on that survey. I do also have the audience's bottom 5, which is going to be, I think, which is quite interesting. I've also got the highest rated episode of Future, and I've also got the most average episode, so the episode that just fell right in the middle of all of that. I think it's quite interesting. So yeah, we'll come to that as we go. But to start, Chris, let's have your 5th favorite episode.
Yeah, so this is one where like like when this idea was first suggested, and we've been toying with doing this episode for years now, almost.
Yeah, it's definitely come up before. We've always sort of said like we'll do it when the show's over, and then kind of forgot about it when the show ended because we were just so burnt out.
When we agreed to do it, this was one of the first episodes that came into my mind. Like all along, I was like, I remember loving that episode.
Sure.
And when I then sat down to start thinking about what I would say about each one, I was like, I've got to rewatch that to work out why. And because I just don't know if it's anyone on, if it's in general viewed this way. But my fifth favorite episode is Keystone Motel.
That is surprising.
Yeah, I know. I always remember having a great time watching it, and and I do. It's because I think it is. I love that side of Ruby and Sapphire. I love seeing. Obviously, we always see Ruby and Sapphire as a couple. That's what Garnet is. But I love seeing them. There's some great stuff of them in love, like when Ruby says to Sapphire at the end. The great thing about fighting is I get to actually see you, and they sort of hug and flirt and kiss and stuff. I think that stuff is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I love. Sorry, I'm getting a. No, I think it's all right. I'm just being interrupted with the call. I love that. I love them fighting. I think the reason for the fights was so well executed and made so much sense. So for those that don't remember this episode, because it's not like I talked about episode a lot. Garnet, Stephen, and Greg go to her motel in Keystone. But Garnet, Ruby and Sapphire are fighting because of a fight with Pearl, and they feel that Pearl potentially abused Fusion. And they separate, and Ruby's just stomping around, like draining out the pool with steam because she's so hot, and Sapphire's covering the room in ice, etc. And I just think it's all very entertaining. I think there's a lot of funny Steve and Greg stuff. I love the Ruby and Sapphire stuff, and I just found it thoroughly entertaining. And it's an episode I've always remembered enjoying, and I've rewatched it, and I was like, no, I do really enjoy this. So yeah, Keystone Motel.
Yeah, I think it's a great choice. I think it's indicative of the way we've decided to do this, which is favorite. I think that's episodes like that are not likely to come up on an overall like an aggregated list.
No.
They're just not, because they're going to appeal to a very specific taste, and therefore will are unlikely to end up like at the very top. In fact, let me see if I can give you an idea. I don't again, because I couldn't download this data, I could not tell you guys exactly where anything turned up, because they're not numbered in the graph I've got. So I'd physically have to count to go down. But with that in mind, though, Chris, 2, 3, 4.
I also think
it's actually within the top 30.
Oh, there you go. Oh, cool.
Oh no, wait, sorry, no, top 40. Sorry,
because I think it's the only time, because during the arc where we have Ruby Ryder and stuff,
yes,
Ruby and Sapphire sort of are apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen them apart, like in Mirror Gem, Ocean Gem, and want to get back together.
Mm-hmm.
To see them bickering, and to see them like having a fight and making up, we don't really see that at any other point in the show.
Yeah, because also, what's more coupley than having a like all couples have had arguments. Obviously some couples more than others, some arguments more serious than others, but no couple goes without having debates, having discussions, having disagreements. That's being a person is. At some point you would have to address disagreements or concerns you had like that. So what's one of the, other than that episode being very entertaining, which it 100% is, it's just really weirdly humanizing of Ruby and Sapphire's relationship. It really does make their relationship feel way more relatable because they've gone from this like impossibly perfect couple, which is lovely, and we love that. And, we love that they're so in love and that they very rarely fight. But it is also nice to see that they're not completely escaping that. You know what I mean? Like that they are, to a certain point, capable of falling into the same traps other couples do. And then and seeing them disagree on such an important subject also allows you, in the midst of an arc, which is the arc about how Garnet and Pearl have fallen out, it allows you to explore why Garnet is so conflicted about it by having her literally be conflicted about it. Like it's a totally clever, fun episode, and I totally understand why that would be high on anyone's list. It's great, and particularly I think it was the first time we really got to glimpse that they have different power sets.
Yeah, with the heat and the cold and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And they do some really fun stuff with that. Like Sapphire turns the whole room into an ice book. Oh, and I think I said this on the original podcast about the episode. It also has one of my favorite tiny moments, which is the fact that Greg knows them both as individuals, and like that just kind of emphasizes his history with the gems, because it's the bit where he looks in, sees Sapphire has covered the room in ice, and he just goes, "Oh, where's the other one?" And Stephen says, "Oh, she's in the pool." Like it's just a moment that says a lot about his relationship and history with them, and I thought that was just such a nice little touch. So so that's my number 5. What's your number 5, Daniel?
Well, Chris, my number 5 is potentially going to surprise you, because before we started this, I named an episode that was in the audience's top 5. And Chris went, "Really?"
Oh, no, but that was confusion about... I was thinking it was a different episode. So
that's right. That's right. Okay, that's right. But, because it's also in mine.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise. Now that I know for sure which episode that is,
sorry. So this is the problem with two episodes that have very similar titles. But I have chosen for my number 5, Lion 3, straight to video, which to me is the heart of the show in a lot of ways. It's the episode, for those who don't know, where Stephen finds the video from Rose. And I don't have a huge amount to say on this episode, really, because it's quite straightforward. It's Stephen looking for answers, and he does find answers of a sort, but they're not... It's almost the show telling us, you keep looking for answers in the mythology and what's going on and all that stuff, but really this show's going to be about character and heart and what these people feel. It's not... The mythology is there, and it can be cool, but it's not what's important. Because this episode, if memory serves, and again, I haven't seen this in a little while myself, but it's an episode of Stephen seeking answers about a practical thing and finding this video that's a very emotional thing. And I think it's the mission statement of the show in a lot of ways. And it also just has just this incredibly beautiful moment where he goes and sees Sadie, and Sadie has the VHS player, so they watch it together, and then Lars comes in and sees them both crying. So it's even undercut with a brilliant joke, but not undercut in a way that actually harms the message of the video of the episode. I just think it's a really powerful episode. I think it's one of the most heartfelt that exists. It's also got some of the best jokes, and it lays out one of the most important elements of the show's own mission statement, which is, while mythology is cool, the heart and soul of this is way more important, and that remained true throughout the show's run. And I thought it was really cool that they managed to do that. And it was also our first proper glimpse of Rose, moving, other than that portrait above the door. So it's also kind of important for establishing what she sounded and looked like. You know what I mean? We hadn't really had that yet, and seeing her move and also interact with Greg, there's just a lot in that video and that episode that I thought was really, really valuable.
It does a really good job of when the tape goes in and you first see Rose, you as an audience automatically react the same way Stephen does, which is kind of it feels huge, it feels massive, and I think to then for it to then mainly be about kind of heart, although it's also equally the kind of thing you could pour over from a mythology point of view. I think it's a really effective episode.
It raises some questions about like physically how did she have a baby. Like it's when she talks about because it's one of the first episodes other than the very earliest episodes where they reference her giving up her form to make Steven, and there's just a part of you going like, I still have a lot of questions you're never going to be able to answer because you're on Cartoon Network about how this works just on a practical level. Which is weird, but there it is. So yeah,
but I love that. I love that you could, I imagine this episode is one of those episodes that just inspires a shitload of conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also like it's one of those episodes as well that has like one sort of your initial takeaway from it is this is a really heartfelt thing. She sort of, this life that she loves, she's giving it to Steven, But then there's the other angle of it, that comes up later on. Like that video plays into a lot of future episodes, and particularly there's storm in the room when Steven sort of says, "Did you have me because you were trying to escape your problems? You've left me with your mess. Was that the plan? Maybe it wasn't so." Good intentioned, and he starts questioning that. So the video almost has like this. It sort of weirdly adds to the way the show initially idolizes Rose and sort of puts Rose on this pedestal. It does that a lot early on, and it's really interesting to see like that play out as like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it helps build that initial fictional version of this perfect person that she clearly wasn't, because the video is so like done like that. So yeah, it's I genuinely think it's brilliant. So yeah, I'm
completely agree.
Yeah.
What's number 5 for the audience, Daniel?
Number 5 for the audience, Chris. Number 5 for the audience is we got a drum roll. We don't have a drum roll. Jailbreak.
Nice.
Interesting choice, I thought, for their number 1 episode.
Number
5 episode. Sorry. Yeah. I thought like with Jailbreak, I think it's interesting, and we'll have to. Well, this I think this episode will come back up. But for me, like with Jailbreak, what's amazing about Jailbreak is it sort of established the show's ability to hide a secret in plain sight.
Yes.
That's such an important thing that this show did multiple times throughout. Some more effective than others. I mean, even, a lot of the viewers, already figured out that, Garnet was 2.
I think there's a viewer right here that figured it out, Dan.
Yes, there is. So it's not the most perfectly hidden secret, but it is very well hidden. I think the fact that like a lot of people were like debating it, and there were still a lot of people on the other side that didn't buy it, proves that they did a really good job with it. But also, this episode is like. It's the power ballad, isn't it? It's the episode that's full of action and mythology, and it's also got the revelation that we've got, this love story that's been happening in front of our very eyes we didn't know. I mean, Jailbreak is an iconic episode of the show, and it's also the episode of the show that a lot of people mark as when they fell in love with the show. And I think totally understand that. I think it's a stonking choice.
I think it's got it all. It's got some amazing Lapis stuff. It's got some great and very entertaining Paradox stuff. It has one of the best songs from the show's history, which
isn't
is obviously stronger
isn't it
than
kind of
you.
frustrating that like the show hit like such a great song so early in its run? Like it never, as much as I love many of the songs we did later on, I don't think any song like I don't think
I'll tell you what it is.
The
Combination. I think there are like I don't know if it's. I don't think I even chose it as my. I think Change Your Mind when we did favourite songs was my favourite song. I don't know if it would be my favourite song, and I think for a lot of people there are songs that they maybe like more, but I can't think well, there's a few, some that might come up later in this episode, but the combination of what is happening, the music video, as it were, I know it's not a music video, but do you know what I mean? The sequence and the song are such an amazing pairing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is like the power in it.
Yeah,
and
I was just about to say, it's empowering, isn't it? And I don't know 100% why, but it is.
Oh, because it's a space lesbian fighting a prick,
fighting a space fascist.
Fighting a flawed.
It's space lesbians fighting a space fascist.
It's a space lesbian fighting a space fascist. Fascist is the word I was looking for, and it's just brilliant. It's amazing, and I think that moment alone, like, is why it's probably in a lot of people's top 5. But yeah, the reveal. The lapis, it's fantastic. It's a great episode.
Yeah, I also think what I like a lot about that episode is just like they don't waste a lot of time with that episode, like, because basically the previous episode ends with them all being defeated, sort of captured. Garnet being what we eventually find out was Split, and the episode just like. This episode just absolutely takes that momentum forward as well, which I always love. I just love that the fact that the episode it starts, Steven's trapped, but he immediately, it's not like we have an episode of him being trapped and they're taunting him or whatever. No, he gets out pretty much immediately, and then chaos ensues, and it just feels Go on, sorry.
Even that, like, the way he escapes, it's such a cool idea that it is a gem prison, but because he's got human in him, he can walk straight through it. Like, it's awesome.
And the way they shoot that as well, animate that as well, but also just the scale of this. Like, considering the show had up to this point, with the exception of maybe the Lapis two-parter, about halfway between this and the very first episode, I mean, the scale. This is the first time this show had this sense of scale. Like, this is, a big ship threatening the entire town. They've been captured, and it crashes on the beach while the song is playing. Like, holy shit! Do you know what I mean? Like, that's
it's awesome.
Like this, like, I can't even express like the how much that is different to what the show was doing prior to that. This was the episode that went, hey, scale. Like, you want big, we can do you big. Like, you know what I mean? You want epic, we got that too. So it was a real wake up call for the show, and a really valuable episode to show us what it can do on a bigger scale. I have managed to, Chris, while we've been talking, generate a list that is numbered. It's been a
cool
nightmare to do. So if at any point now you want me to find out where an episode fell on the scale, I have.
Oh, you're gonna want to do it with my number 4 choice, Dan.
All right, well let's go straight into that then. What is your number 4 choice?
Because if you thought Keystone Motel was a left field choice,
which by the way was 36 in the end, and I can now tell you with certainty.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So I'm someone that a lot of people say, when I watch this show, it reminds me of this moment in my life and that sort of thing. And I get that an awful lot from music. But I tend to, my sort of nostalgia and memories with film and TV tends to be remembering watching that. Like, I have a lot of nostalgic love and memories for Back to the Future, Only Fools and Horses, Friends, but a lot of that is the circumstances and the excitement in which I watched those shows. It's not like Back to the Future makes me think about discovering something about a parent or a zany relationship with a mad scientist who makes me time travel. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not... but a lot of people do engage with TV in that way. They'll see a mother-daughter scene, and it will remind them of a mother-daughter moment in their life.
Sure.
I don't necessarily seem to get that with TV a lot, but in my number 4 choice of Steven Universe, I remember so vividly watching it, and immediately, like I was in a flashback episode of a show where you went through different stages of someone's life, or like I was in the pensive in Harry Potter. I remember just being plunged into just memory after memory from my youth, and it was just so vivid. And I don't think a TV show has ever done that before. and it just so took me back to certain times, and all of those times, Dan, were me anxiously waiting for a girl to text me back. My number 4 choice is Gemcation.
I love that. That's your choice. That's great. I love it. I think that's a really amazing choice. And also, can I just say, more eloquently explained here, I think, than on the original podcast. So congratulations.
yeah. Because I think I did touch upon that on the podcast. I'm sure we did talk about it. Like, as I started that, I would have thought you'd be able to have guessed where I was going.
I genuinely wasn't sure until you said the text thing. I was like, I don't know which episode he's necessarily referring to here. I
love the core idea of that, as well as the texting stuff, which just brought back a load of memories. What I also loved is the core notion of it's not a Gem problem. Because basically, for those that don't remember, Stephen and Connie have had a fight and she's not texting him, and they go away to try and get Stephen's mind off it. But no matter what the Gems do, it's not working. It's not snapping him out of his sort of panicked mode. And it sort of preempts a lot of stuff that comes later in Future and the end of the show overall, but which I've only just sort of realised. But also, at the core of it is the notion that it's not a problem the Gems can fix, and therefore Greg has to step in, and Greg and Steven have a moment where Greg talks to him about it. And there's even that moment where Greg's like, literally like, oh, this one's for me. And I love that idea. I love that moment. There's I'll tell you now, every episode on my list involves Greg in some way, even if it's only a small scene, which is why I was like, oh, maybe I need to reassess for top 5 characters and put Greg a bit higher.
Interesting.
Or maybe I did, I can't remember. But I love that notion and idea. So yeah, between that as a core notion to the episode and what it did in terms of specifically like plunging me into just a series of memories from me really nervously, and not even always like negative memories. It wasn't like the same scenario as Stephen. It was just that feeling. Like I remember being 14 years old, sitting on the toilet, Dan, with a Nokia 3310 that had an Only Fools and had an Only Fools and Horses cover, sending text like, oh, so-and-so thinks we fancy each other. Isn't that weird? Oh, yeah, that's weird. Yeah. I mean, they were saying that maybe we should go on a date. Crazy, huh? Yeah, crazy. Yeah. Did you want to go on the date? Like just madness. And yeah, so Gemcation. Like, I'm willing to bet it's not in anyone else's.
Well, I was going to ask you, where do you think in the overall rank? Now, it's worth noting that because of the way we did this and the way I said to people, just, vote for as many as you want. The further you get down the list, the less people that technically had impact on it, if that makes sense. I think like 10 to 20% of people were sort of affecting the bottom half of the list of the wider whole that voted in general. But the bottom half of the list is kind of interesting. So I just wanted to
imagine it's lower half because I don't think anyone would say it was a bad episode.
Well, there was 174 episodes total to be ranked. Where do you think it came in that list?
Like 80, 70?
160.
Oh, wow. Of 174. Wow.
Yeah. I'm quite surprised at that. I am quite surprised at that.
Well, then I don't know how popular the Stephen and Connie not talking to each other plot was.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point. If
memory serves, wasn't it always also really stretched out because of like the way they were airing the episodes at the time?
Yeah, and
so it almost felt to people like it was going on and on.
I'll say this right now. Dewey Wins is one of the lowest. It's 170, and that is absolutely not fair because that is 100%. People were angry at that episode because there'd been a big gap from a mythology thing, and the next episode back after a massive gap was Dewey Wins, which is an innocuous episode, but a completely pleasant, enjoyable, romp episode of Steven Universe, just knocking about the town, having some fun. It has some great jokes in it. It does not deserve to be 170. So I do think there's another one here down at the bottom as well that I feel exactly the same way about, but we'll talk about that towards the end of the podcast. But yeah, that's definitely influenced the bottom half of the list more than not.
Because I admit the whole texting thing is an incredibly personal thing.
I don't think it's that personal though, because like I had those experiences growing up as well. We all like, but anyone of our age, and I know maybe it's not so much personal as it's more our age than the group, because the Steven Universe fan base seems to be split across quite a wide spectrum of age groups. I know a lot of our listeners are younger than us and might not have had quite that experience, the Nokia 3310 of it all, when texting was really the only way. But now you've got, instant messaging and I couldn't afford to call people on my mobile phone. I had text, and each text cost me 30p or something absurd like that.
Yeah. Do you remember the days where you couldn't even, because now you can see whether, like, you didn't even know if someone had read it back. Imagine that, kids. Imagine not even knowing whether someone has seen the message or not.
Correct. Yeah.
Mind-blowing. But I imagine
So part of it might be a little bit specific, but not to you, but to more our age group. Because I also would rate that episode a lot higher than the listeners have done here.
Yeah, because I think also, like, regardless of how you feel about that element of it, like, surely the Stephen and Greg of it all has got a hit with people. But, it could be, like you say, it could be a victim of circumstance. But moving us on, Dan, what is your number four?
I've been pipped at the post by our listeners here because it's Jailbreak.
Okay, cool.
Because again, it's so if Lion Straight to Video is the heart of the show, the twist of the show, the surprise elements of the show, the things that would catch you off guard and you wouldn't realize were a thing, or could what are those brilliant turns that sort of like really prove they were thinking about things from day one. Jailbreak is it with the song and all the other stuff. So I don't know how much more I have to say on that, but because the audience pipped me there. But yeah, that's my number 4, Jailbreak.
Cool, awesome. And what is the audience's number 4?
So the audience's number 4 is Sworn to the Sword.
Yeah, I thought, because I sort of after having my main list, I looked at the episode list, and then I looked at like top 10 Steven Universe episodes lists, just out of curiosity. Those things didn't, as is very clear, Gemcation and Keystone Motel, I very much went with my gut. But when I was looking at those lists, one of the consistent ones was Sworn to the Sword. Yeah, it really does. It really does seem to show up quite a lot on these sort of lists, and I think for good reason. It's a really entertaining episode. It's got one of the best songs, one of the songs that's definitely in the sort of, like, I think for most people would be in that sort of top half of their Steven Universe songs. It's a really great one. It's kind of a dark episode. It's got this really upsetting undertone. The theme I've also noticed with audience preference is the rose pearl of it all seems to always show up in audience preference. The way you've noticed a trend of Greg showing up in your top 5 episodes. I sort of see a lot of the Rose Pearl story and the key moments from that in this. And I think Pearl saying do it for her, that is to say do it for him. Oh, such a great song.
Which is a wonderful song, but like the message of it as well. It's like it's the most clear example of how messed up their relationship was. It was a really fucked up relationship because it was one part affection, genuine affection, and one part like duty and role, which is exactly what Rose was fighting against, was this weird caste system, but it sort of existed between her and her number 2. So it's like, yikes. That's like a whole box that you don't want to open, and you just sort of want to just go, no, that's super dark. And then the fact she's imparting that on Connie, who's a child, and she's essentially saying put your life on the line for Stephen because he's important, and that's fucked up because Connie is a child.
There's also, it's not just the Pearl and Rose. There's some amazing Connie stuff in this episode.
Yeah, there is.
It's so like It's I can't remember where it comes, but I assume it's like the beginning of Connie's kick-assery.
Yes,
or at least outward kick-assery. And that's one of my favourite elements of the show. And I think it's so beautifully handled.
Yes.
It's a great choice. I absolutely see why it's on the list.
Yeah, it's a wonderful episode, and it'll be interesting once we've gone through the entire audience top 5. I'm gonna have I want to take a look at it from the perspective of the Pearl Rose and just see if we can. I wonder if every episode on that list. I'm trying not to think about it right now because I want to talk about it later. But I'm wondering if every episode on that list, even though it's in front of me, I'm sort of like averting my eyes a bit. It has a connotation because I've only just clocked that going from, Jailbreak, Sworn in the Sword, and thinking about what I think might be what I'm pretty sure is ahead of it. Like, I've scrolled it down now, so I can't see it. But that'll be interesting. So, Chris, your third favorite episode?
Well, speaking of Pearl and Rose, I me, Dan, love the love. Last one out of Beach City, I think is a tremendous. I'm all of my top 3. I wouldn't be surprised to see elsewhere, either your list or their list or whatever. But last one out of Beach City, I rewatched it, and it is such a joyous episode. It has just what I love the moment where they. So for those that don't remember, they're Amethyst and Greg. Even this one, because I was like, this is the one where I was like, I don't think Greg's in this one, and then I rewatched it, and he appears in the first scene, and I'm like, fucking hell, you're obsessed with Greg, man. And so they decide to go to. Pearl decides to try and be cool and go to take Amethyst and Steven to a rock concert, and she ends up attracted to this woman and gets in a police chase. It's a great episode. I'm sure listeners of this know the episode. But it's one of my favourite moments is still when they get in the car after first seeing Mystery Girl, and there's a moment's silence, and then Steven just goes, "Is no one going to say it? I'm going to say it. She looks a lot like Mum, guys. You noticed it. I noticed it." And what I love about it is it's like he was just in that moment. So rarely in this show is Steven the audience. So rarely is Steven asking the question.
Often he's the exact opposite. Like, often he's almost the antithesis to the audience. Because we're going, Steven, notice this thing. Ask this question. And he just isn't. Yeah.
There's such joy in him just being the audience. But also, the whole notion of Pearl being ready in New Pearl and getting over Rose. The police car is a really the police chase is a really exciting scene that's really well animated. Amethyst and Steven's reaction as she's talking to her and her interpretation of it when Pearl's like, yeah, and then I told her that I saved her entire planet, and Amethyst and Steven are like, and then she's like, and she gave me this code, and they're so excited for her. I think the whole episode is just a joy, and I love to see people flirting, and I love a good meet cute. The only thing that, on reflection, it is not in any way the episode's fault, but when it ends with a big and introducing Mystery Girl as herself, and we never really see that character explored again, but that's not this episode's fault. I love, this is right up my street. You're flirting and meet cutes and Pearl and character stuff, and there's some great comedy. Amethyst, Pearl, and Steven is a great combination. It's just a pure joy. So last one out of Beach City.
Yeah, it's a wonderful episode. Like a genuinely wonderful episode. I can tell you now, it's not in the audience's top 5, but
it doesn't surprise me but I assume it's hard. It's got to be in the top 30, is it?
Yeah, where would you place it if you were guessing?
If I was guessing, 12.
Yeah, you're not far off. It's 16. So yeah, not far at all.
There you go.
It's clearly a very popular episode. I think the reason it maybe doesn't get into the top these days is because I do think a lot of people really did want to see Mystery Girl again. We went through a real arc on the podcast about that, didn't we? Because when we watched this episode, we had the same Because I think by the time we were on this episode, we were pretty close to being caught up, or we were caught up, or like I was only a little bit ahead, so I knew that she hadn't shown up yet. So I was in your shoes, of eagerly awaiting the return. And what I think we ultimately settled on, and I hope you agree, and I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No, I do. No, I know where you're going, and I do agree.
Yeah, it was that in the end, I think this episode was more about her getting over Rose than it was anything else. Like that idea of like being able to talk to someone else, but then like move on from it. And the fact that she looked like Rose is kind of like almost symbolic of her moving on in a big way, and therefore she didn't then need to actually date her. Like that is actually kind of irrelevant. It's not really what the point of the episode was. Obviously, the hints we've had since is that this mystery girl is Sabine, who is Kevin's an ex of Kevin's. She then shows up again in the audience at one of the said he killed the suspect's gigs, so she does kind of appear again, but not properly. But I was kind of over it. I think the fact that Pearl never really seems to have followed up on that says a lot more about Pearl's growth than her trying to be in a relationship with Mystery Girl / Sabine. And I probably put it more eloquently on previous episodes because this is it's weird to sort of be summarizing thoughts that we've previously each of these episodes we analyzed in the space of 45 minutes to an hour, and here we are now trying to analyze them in a few minutes as we run through the list. But it's super important, and I think as a turning point for Pearl's character, you take this piece out, then the pieces that follow don't make sense, in my opinion. This is
completely agree.
Quintessential Pearl episode because it really
definitely
does finish the jigsaw. And then all the other stuff that Chris said as well, which is that it's funny, it's charming. Seeing Pearl trying to be badass when she's naturally not quite that, is really fun. The way they do the ending with the titles for everyone, the music, like it's all done super well. There's just nothing at all wrong with it. It's like a really solid episode. So like all it would take is for somebody to have a bit more of a connection to one element of the story for it to be in their top 5, which is what's happened. It would be in most people's top 20 at least. It sounds like 16th for the audience, for the listeners here. So for me, like it's an absolute no-brainer that somebody like Chris, who does love a good meet cute, he does love a good romance, even if it didn't end up paying it off in the way that we expected, the episode itself stands as a really incredible version of that, and it works really well. So I'm totally on board. Great choice.
Definitely. What's your third?
My third. I don't think I'm gonna actually. Where is? I don't even know where this is in the audiences. I didn't look. Oh, okay, no, not too far down. Okay, I don't feel as bad now. It's got to be the test.
Test was on my bigger list.
Yeah, as was last one out of Beach City. So we'll come back to it, but I've got like an honourable mentions where I've got the 5 that were in the sort of top 10 before I culled it down to my top 5. So I'll read those out quickly at the end. Just I won't talk about them, I'll just name them quickly. But yeah, last one out of Beach City was one of mine for that too. The test is an incrediable episode. So if Line Straight to Video is the heart of the show, Jailbreak represents the surprise of the show. The test kind of represents the tragedy of the show. And I think a lot of people might be taken aback by that sentence initially, but what always struck me about this show, and anyone who's listened to this podcast from day one will already know what I'm about to say, because I've said it so many times, but one of the things that always used to hit me the hardest about this show, one of the things that upset me the most, one of the things that most viscerally made me react, is that every time this show reminded me that Stephen was a child forced to be mature beyond his years by his circumstances. Every time the show forced this wonderful, happy-go-lucky child to be an adult quickly was really, really upsetting because that's not fair. No one should have their childhood robbed from them like that by responsibility. But Stephen is responsible, and here he makes a very, very mature decision. So for those who don't remember the episode of The Test, I'm sure you will do. It's the episode where he wants to be a gem more, he wants to go on missions more, and they say, well, we could give you the test, and it's this obstacle course, essentially, this deadly-looking obstacle course, but Stephen discovers that it's fiction, essentially. The test is they're all faked. Nothing can hurt him. So when he got through it initially, he feels like he's done a really good job, but then he realizes that everything he did was just like luck and coincidence. So he's mad. He's fuming. He wants to yell at the gems for not trusting him and not giving him a real test and treating him like a child. And we get this moment where he overhears them talking, and we realize, and it's the moment all of us had as kids as well. This is also the other thing that's powerful about this episode. The moment we all had as kids when we realized our parents were human beings that were flawed and made mistakes and didn't know what they were doing any more than I did, or well, maybe, as a child, obviously they would have known more than me, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're all just sort of figuring it out always in life. And a TV show has never represented that moment quite as well as this, when Steven hears them talking and the conversation they're having is basically like, oh, he needs this, but we don't know what he needs. We don't know what we're doing. Maybe this is a problem. And Steven feels responsibility to keep the team happy and together and make them feel like they've achieved something. The same way they felt like he needed his morale picking up by having a win, he realizes that they need the win as much as he does. And he makes this incredibly mature and incredibly adult decision to put his own anger aside, them fobbing him off again, essentially, with this fake test. And he just goes and tells them it was awesome and thanks them for it. And like, it's just heartbreaking. It's a situation no child should have to be in. And it comes up repeatedly in the show. There are many episodes that are examples of this, but this one always sticks out to me because it's such a different angle on it. Because in a lot of the other ones, it's, you're responsible for X, and it's like, that's insane. This boy is 11 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's so not overt in a way that's problematic or like affects the quality of the episode, but it's a very overt way to look at it, right? Like, you have to defeat X. Really? I'm a child. That's super sad. But this one shows him, forcing him to be mature in a situation where any other child in his shoes would not have made that choice, and showing the effects of all this, putting responsibility on him as making him this much more mature. It's really powerful. It's by far one of the most interesting examples of that, as well as one of the most powerful. So yeah, this episode, the test, absolutely way up on my list. It's number 3. It's fantastic, and I've had a gander as well. Oh, where is it? It was number 10 on the audience's list.
Yeah, I think it's a stunning episode. I think that moment where he's peering over the edge, listening to the conversation, is just such a powerful moment. And it's such as you said, it's a real sign of like, if you think about the actual decision he's making and why, like, it's such a mature, powerful storyline for a kid's show. Like, it's you can kind of force lessons and stuff down people's throat as much as you want, but showing a character make a decision where he considers the feelings of other people and makes a decision that doesn't mean a child's instinct is to go, but no, I can do it, and to bite back. To have someone actively not do that is just very, very powerful.
Well, because it demonstrates the effect that all of the being forced to be mature has had on him. So
yeah,
in the other episodes, he's they're expecting responsibility and maturity out of him when they maybe shouldn't be. But this is one where he demonstrates it, and it's like, oh, that's so much more hurtful. It's so much more sad to see this child isn't even allowed to just be impulsive and react like a child would. He has to consider wider ramifications of his choices. And it's also the first signs of his leadership ability, because he brings the team together by making that choice, by being selfless and putting his own feelings of being hurt aside. But it also then, we also then, that's our first hint at the damage that ultimately comes up in Steven Universe Future, because you shouldn't put your own feelings aside necessarily for the benefit of others every time. You know what I mean? That's also not healthy. It's almost a red flag in itself. As mature as it is and incredible as it is that he's that mature, it's the first big wah like for Steven's whole mental breakdown that we end up getting in Future. So it's just such an important episode for me, but also genuinely one of the most impactful for me as well. So yeah, the test, 100%.
Yeah. And what about the audience's third?
The audience's third. Fucking guess what? They pipped me with Jailbreak, but I fucking pipped them with Line 3 straight to video. Got your back, audience. Got your back.
but before we do, and you know, I think we've summed up that as you
Yes.
know the thing that stops this episode being 2 hours long is us not re-dissecting stuff we've already talked about.
Yes, correct.
Before we do top twos to get sort of to not go, you know, insanely positive and then dip with a negative. Should we do the worst 5 according to the audience now?
Oh yeah, that's a nice idea. Yeah, so the 5 worst episodes according to the audience, and again clarifying that the bottom 5 were sort of selected by a smaller percentage of the whole because not everybody went as far as to rate their bottom 5. 174 Dewey wins, 175 Why So Blue, 176 Escapism, which is definitely on this list because of its positioning.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I disagree as well. 177 Bluebird, and 178 A Very Special Episode. Wow. I don't agree with much of that bottom list, if I'm being completely honest with you, Chris. I think a lot of them
What was a very special episode? I can't remember that one.
That's the Steven Universe Future episode with Rainbow Quartz looking after Onion, which is such a fun episode that, like, I can't believe that's bottom.
Bluebird and Escapism are quite surprising to me, especially when, like, I'm not being funny, but say Uncle? I'm aware I'm particularly biased on the episode that should not be named, but Say Uncle's, like, objectively not a great episode of Steven Universe, surely.
Yeah, actually, where is Say Uncle in this list? That's a good question. Let me have a... While you talk, I'm going to see if I can find Say Uncle.
I think Dewey wins.
Chris, Say Uncle is 104.
Wow.
Out of 174. But what's interesting is going up the list from Dewey wins at 170, we start to get to episodes that I expected to see at the bottom. So Rocknaldo, for example, which so yeah, I don't know, like.
And it's favourite. Like, people may have shouted at their headphones when I said Gemcation. Like, so I get it. It's fine. Like, nobody's choice is wrong, but it is surprising to see something like Escapism and Bluebird quite so low. Yeah,
particularly for me, A Very Special Episode and Escapism were the ones that, like, I was just like, really? Like, because I just objectively, and I know it's favourite, so objectively shouldn't really come into it, but just objectively, like, A Very Special Episode is such good fun. And Escapism's, like, a really, like, fascinating episode. Like, we talked about it at the time as being a victim of circumstance and hype. You know, it was stuck between some really important mythology episodes which kind of screwed it. And in isolation, though, it's a brilliant piece of TV. It's really good. Yeah. And I know obviously it's not a favourite of yours, Chris, because of course it's got the Watermelon Stevens in it, which you're not hugely fond of. But yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. To hit on another mildly negative point, Future did not do well in any of this. The highest rated episode of Future is Volleyball, which doesn't surprise me which episode it is. But what does surprise
me... when you said I've got the highest rated Future before we recorded, I went, well, presumably that's Volleyball.
Yeah, and you absolutely bang on. The highest rated episode was indeed Volleyball of the Future episodes, but it only came 37th. And a lot of them came much further down the list than that. That's an extraordinarily high episode of Future. And then the most middly episode, if anyone's wondering, the very middle episode rated number 87 was Jungle Moon. Which, yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. No, that does, yeah.
I mean, look, I don't hate Jungle Moon. I don't love Jungle Moon.
Yeah.
Fine. I don't have much more to say on Jungle Moon, which is probably about right.
Yeah, fair enough. My number 2.
Yes.
I can't imagine there's any way that this isn't coming up again. And it is the most different, I think, to my initial review, because I have come to recognise this episode as being just an incredible piece of television. Beautifully animated, beautifully nuanced, covers so much ground. Incredible songs, 2 of the best songs, at least in my opinion, that the show ever did. My number 2 choice is Mr. Greg.
Amazing. Can I stop you there for just 1 second, Chris, to save us a bunch of time? Because it's also my number 2 episode, but it's also our audience's number 2 episode. So all three, that is incredible. What are these statistical odds that the three... That is insane. The 3 different people sort of looking at this, myself, you, and the survey done by a reasonably large pool of data, all landed on Mr. Greg being the second favourite episode.
Yeah, because whilst the lower end of the list is, this top 5 for the audience was done by a fair few people. I'm not going to give the exact figures, but we got a good pool. I would say, of data. So that's awesome. But it is, though, isn't it? It's just, both of you, I think both of you might have been number 1, or was certainly very high on my list of favourite songs. It's over, isn't it? Like, the nuance and the depth to the episode that still makes time to have a hell of a lot of fun with songs like Don't Cost Nothing. It's just, what that episode, I rewatched it this morning. And by minute 5, we're starting It's Over, isn't it? And I'm like, wow, we've not even... That means we do It's Over, isn't it? And both of you. And wrap this up in only 5 minutes. That episode feels like it should be half an hour long. It is beautiful. The animation, the emotion, the depth of not just being able to... You don't just explore Pearl and Greg. You explore Pearl and Greg, but you also explore Pearl. You also explore Greg and Steven. You also explore Greg. It's just beautiful writing. It just, the proof of concept in terms of a musical episode is stunning. It's hard to pick it apart too much, because it's basically we all know it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the greatest episodes the show ever did. I think evident by the fact that the 3 different sources gave it second best episode, which is so incredible and so unlikely when we're doing, favorite, not necessarily best. That would have felt a lot more likely if we'd have said absolute, categorically, best episode objectively. We might have that might have been a bit more expected, but wow. I think it's important because, and again, we're going back to the thing we've been talking about earlier, which is this through line of one of the most popular storylines, one of the most powerful storylines, it seems, in this show, is Pearl's journey to getting over Rose. And this is another step in that journey, and it's an earlier step, obviously, than the last one out of Beach City, which we've already discussed. This is the moment of her realizing that she has something to get over. This is her realizing that it's done, that she's pining for a thing that's gone and gone forever. And the fact that it's taken her most of Steven's life up to that point to realize that is tragic, because it just means she's been sort of in this weird stasis for such a long time. The power of the song when that she sings as she realizes that is just cannot be overstated. It's remarkable. And then on top of that, just the music itself and the visuals, and that it's another one of those things like we talked about with Stronger Than You. This is a real combination. In isolation, that song is good, great maybe, but it's the context of the character, the circumstances, the visuals, the balcony that touched the rose, the symbolism of the rose, the message of the song, the lyrics, the importance to the overall character arcs. It's all just there, and so it just comes together in such a perfect way that I wouldn't have imagined. And then there's both of you is such both of you is a very underrated song in this show. I think it doesn't get talked about nearly as much, and it's unfortunate. I think the reason that is, and I think we talked about this in the top 5 songs episode, quite simply because it's in the same episode as It's Over, isn't it? Which is iconically, famously brilliant, But both of you is a wonderful song. It's so sweet. Great. It's so charming. It's such a simple message, but it doesn't feel cheesy, which is kind of a miracle, because that, on paper that should be super cheesy, right? Am I alone in that thought?
And it's whilst It's Over, isn't it? It's so beautiful for all the reasons you've just described. After watching the episode, I find it's both of you that I'm humming. Like, it's just got such a nice melody.
Yes.
Like, I nearly, when you answered the call, when I answered the call to you, I was still going, and I love both of you. But I was like, I had to keep it in because I was like, well, that's gonna spoil number 2. I think it's a work of art, like literally a work of art, this episode. So it doesn't shock. Before number 1s, then should we do honourables? And should we give the audience an honourable top 5 by doing the 6 to 10?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. Look at you, Mr. Great segues. And look at me, Mr. Shitting on the segue by pointing it out. So honourable mentions. Yep. My ones were Alone Together, which is, I'm pretty sure because I get these two mixed up all the time. The first one when they fuse and go to see Kevin.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think Together Alone is the one where they're trapped, like right at the end in season 5. But Alone Together is the one I mean, which I think I've got them the right way around. The one I mean is the one where they go to the dance. As Stevonnie the first time. Bismuth. Wonderful episode. Again, Steven's responsibility on show. Last one out of Beach City, which we've already talked about. Log Date 715-2, which is probably just the best Peridot episode. It's a shame that Admiral Peridot doesn't get into these lists. She's amazing. Great episode. And then Storm in the Room. Steven gets to tell off his mum. So, so those are my honourable mentions. They were sort of my... I didn't actually go to the trouble of ordering them, but they were sort of my 10 to 6.
Yeah, that's fair. Mine, I've actually got 6, but but we talked about a lot of them already. Well, the first 3. So The Answer, which obviously... Oh, no, we haven't talked about The Answer. But The Answer, Ruby and Sapphire's origin story. Yes. Beautiful animation. Yeah, Is that in the... Well, we'll see the audience's honourables or number 1 in a minute. But I'm surprised The Answer's not come up actually already on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you now on the audiences, it's 33.
Blimey!
Yeah.
Wow. Fair play. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Just incredible animation, a really sweet story, lovely meet cute, felt just really exciting, and there's a lot of warmth in that episode. So I think it's brilliant. The Test we've talked about, Jailbreak we've talked about, Ocean Gem, some amazing Lapis stuff, and some just that kind of, like you said earlier, the Mirror Gem, Ocean Gem was sort of the first sign of the epicness that would follow and stuff. Some great stuff. Change Your Mind. It has its flaws, but it also has, all the fusions. It does a lot of bold stuff. And I thought I was kind of conflicted, even though it's only in honourable mentions with Change Your Mind. But I kind of think it's one of those things where if some of those other answers we didn't get had then come, maybe people wouldn't, Change Your Mind is rushed. It wouldn't seem so rushed if the answers came. But also, when you think about moments like the stone being taken out of Stephen, just some of the most powerful and beautifully animated stuff the show's ever done. And that last moment, the
she's gone moment from Stephen when he yells she's gone, and that, and when he reunites with his gems and the camera pans round, some of the most incredible animation ever. Yeah, that episode is full of just remarkable stuff. Yeah, 100%. It's flawed, which prevents it from being in my top sort of 10. But it's really up there. It's a great episode.
Yeah, it's full of great stuff. And also the actual song "Change Your Mind" I love.
Yes.
And a Single Pale Rose, just the culmination of this secret and these stories, and the reveal and stuff was amazing.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we've talked about are in the audiences, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
So number 6 is the only one that actually has not been mentioned so far, which is On the Run, which I love that episode, but it wouldn't have made it into my sort of top 10, top 20. But it's a great episode, but it's number 6 for the audience, which is really interesting. Wow. Then Alone Together, which has already been mentioned by myself, Single Pale Rose, which you mentioned, Mindful Education is number 9, The Test is number 10. Then just a few little notes I want to make for ones we've just talked about and where they show up. Change Your Mind actually ended up being 22nd. Ocean Gem was ahead of that. It's 17. Last one out of Beach City ended up 16th. Mirror Gem was 13th. Bismuth was 15th, looking at this. Giant Woman was 19th. Change Your Mind was 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
And Storm in the Room was 30th in the end.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised Storm in the Room's not high. And where was the answer?
That was, I was looking that up, wasn't I? And then that's when I got distracted by because I was listening to what you were saying to try and make sure I remembered to say them all here. Let me find the answer for you. The answer is 33, so just a couple down.
Wow.
Just a couple down.
So if based on what's been said, I assume there's potential that me and the audience have got the same number one, and I assume that what your number one might be. So I'll do mine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few things you know about me, Dan. I love love. I love Ruby and Sapphire. I love Lapis and kick-ass Lapis moments. I love a good musical number.
Mm-hmm.
And I love something I really love is Avenger Styles lineup poses.
So this episode is Coach Steven, I assume then.
Yes, exactly. What an episode. Is Coach Steven the one where they play the rubies?
No, that's Hit the Diamond. Hit the Diamond came 29th. Coach Steven came 31st. That's the one where Steven tries to get everyone in Beach City strong and he makes a makeshift gym on the beach. That's a good one.
Hit the Diamond I did think about. I do enjoy that episode. But no, it's Reunited for me. Reunited does, and I assume for the audience as well. Am I right there?
You are not.
Oh, okay, fair enough. It's not in the audience's top 10. I didn't know.
It's 26th.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, I admit, that's not. I'm not surprised by that because a lot of the stuff I've named is personal. I admit a lot of it is fan wank, but I love a bit of fan wank, Dan. I just think for just one day, let's only think about love. Just the power of the wedding itself, the power of doing that, the power of seeing the wedding, what that might do for children. Oh, wonderful stuff. The intensity of the battle, the moment where they're all running forward, about to have the battle. Lapis returning, Peridot's face as Lapis returns, and she returns with such might and power. There's just so much to love in that episode, and it ticks so many boxes for me. And it was, again, such a joy, and I think it juggles so many tones and ideas really, really well. I think it's kind of Reunited as Infinity War to Change Your Mind being Endgame, and I just think it's so well constructed. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I love that episode. It was, for all intents and purposes, it was my number 11. It was like the last one I cut from my honorable mentions to make them 5. It's an incredible episode for 1,000,001 reasons. Notwithstanding, obviously, the wedding being the most, one of the most important things. I think the reason it ends up dropping a little for me is because quite a lot of it, is the battle and the overall story stuff, which never grabs me as much as the more personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for all that epicness and that scale, which is important and is why an episode like Jailbreak makes it onto my list, it doesn't quite have the same personal impact on the grounds of, like, I always go for the character stuff. And the character stuff that's in this episode is kind of stuff that was set up or dealt with in a previous episode. So they're getting married because they're in love. Why are they in love? Because we've seen all these episodes that have built that up. Do you know what I mean? So, like, this episode, while hugely important for a number of reasons, only just misses out on my top 10 on the basis of it doesn't, when I compare it to episodes like Storm in the Room, which tells us so much about Steven and his relationship with his mother, or Log Date 715-2, and I don't want to make this about why it's not in mine, but that's just to clarify, because I agree with everything you're saying. I think it is a remarkable episode with some insane action, beautiful animations, so many incredible moments. It really is the Infinity War of Steven Universe. It's seeing all these things come together, when we haven't seen that before, seeing everyone fight as one, which we haven't seen before. You know, the fact that Diamond's just come and like interrupt the wedding is insane. You know, the Lapis moment where she drops the barn on Blue Diamond.
So
you
good.
know, like it's there's so much to love about this episode. And then you're right. I mean, you know. Just one way that's only think about love. You know, that's just one of the most amazing songs the show ever did. So yeah, there's a ton to love about Reunited. I think it is an astonishing piece of television.
My personal tick list, this has every element of that.
Yes, of course.
Massive, you know, with a massive tick. So yeah, I love it. I've got a pretty good guess on your number one, but let's go to your number one.
Yeah, my number one is, I mean, I think unsurprising. I don't think anyone who's listened to this podcast will be shocked to hear that my favorite episode is Mindful Education. I think there's a generation of kids that are going to grow up healthier mentally because this episode exists. It's remarkable how important this is and how much I wish I'd had this as a kid, and knowing I'd be a much healthier human being mentally had I had this growing up. And these are some really important techniques. The episode doesn't outright like teach like, because it still has to be an episode of television, but the ideas it brings to the table will be revolutionary for many, many children. And many adults that sit down and watch this episode. And I think on top of that, it's just a really entertaining piece of television. Like it's got an amazing song in it. And you want to talk about the song being complemented by the visuals. Holy hell. Holy hell.
Definitely.
The way they represent that sort of anxiety and those sort of swirling thoughts with the butterflies, like just beautiful. And that like learning to be at peace with yourself, and take a breath and take a moment. Just really, really important stuff. And like the way they set it up, the way they pay it off, and the way they use the show's science fiction premise, you know, to help sort of be a facsimile for a person that's not feeling whole. You know, the idea that they can't stay fused because they're not in balance, because they're not personally like in the right mindset, you know. Yes, all right, that's a science fiction concept. We can't fuse with other people in real life, but what it represents about those characters is incredible. And the fact they used that concept to talk about a very human and a very real thing is super important and powerful. And also, I just think like from a pure like, because we're talking about favorite episodes, so it's not just about like, oh, this episode was really important to me. It's really important in general. It's also just like it is just a really solid story. Like it's a really well told piece of television. Like even if you take out of that context, you know, and it tells us so much about these characters. It tells us so much about the world. It tells us a lot about ourselves. It's cheesy as shit to say, but it's really, really. It means a lot to me, and I think I sleep better at night knowing this exists and knowing that there might be a generation of kids that got to see this and learn from this. And I hope that kids and adults alike have taken some of the messages from this.
It's full of some incredible advice, and it's a beautiful, beautiful episode. Where was it in the audiences?
That's a great. Now you're asking the big questions, Chris. Where was it? We've already talked about it because it was in their top 10. It was number 9.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, quite.
I didn't draw any attention to it because I knew I was about to. I didn't want the audience to fucking pit me again. So when I went over their top, their 6 to 10, I was like, Alone Together, Single Per Rose, Mindful Education, The Test. I just skip over it as quickly as possible. I don't want them to get my thunder. They put it as number 9. So I think that speaks to that a lot of people also felt that way. The only real surprise in their top 10 is On the Run. That really does surprise me.
I don't even know what is On the Run.
On the Run is the one where he runs off with Amethyst. Amethyst having a shit time. Steven's so they go on the they sort of get on a train.
Oh, they go on like the train and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Maybe that's just a reflection of it's a great Amethyst episode.
Yeah, and maybe where do we rank Amethyst in our characters? I can't remember.
Yeah, pretty high. I completely see what you're saying about Mindful Education. I love it. I think it's a beautiful piece of television, and like you say, one of the most important messages and kind of teaching opportunities for kids. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So is the audience's number one then, Dan? Is that an episode that's been mentioned by you or I?
It is not.
Wow. Okay, go on, hit me. What is the audience's number one?
I mean, I think this is actually something we probably should have predicted, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But it's Rose's scabbard.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's like I was trying to think, like, what are the iconic episodes that we've not mentioned? But yeah, of course, that is probably the remaining iconic thing that we've not talked about.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, let's address the elephant in the room now. Chris and I didn't particularly dislike that episode, but we also didn't particularly love it, and that upset a lot of people. To the point that when we do those, rewatch episodes, we go back and rewatch an episode we've already reviewed and sort of address our review on it, we've been sort of revisiting some of them. Rose's scabbard is the one people want us to get to the most. They want us to change our minds, as it were, on Rose's scabbard. So with that in mind, Chris, is it worth, instead of like doing an analysis here in an episode that my memory of is, one, a little vague, but also two, like, it just didn't work. It wasn't really anywhere in my thoughts for this list. Instead of us sitting here and trying to assess why the audience put it number one, do we make our very next episode of Steven University the revisit of Rose's scabbard, even though it's a bit further down the line than we've been doing?
So, someone needs to piss. Yeah, no, I think that.
I don't, mate. I could do. I'm Captain America in this bitch. I could do this all day. But
I don't think. I don't think. Considering it was the audience's number one, I agree with you that us sitting down and trying to talk about it now wouldn't justify
fair.
that as enough. Yeah, it's not right. Yeah,
it's not fair because neither of us have seen it recently. I thought about watching it before this, but Chris won't have because he doesn't know what's on this list. And I was I just thought no. And also it's a bigger discussion. We've said time and time again that we're going to do it at some point. We'll do it as a revisit and analyze it and talk about whether we were wrong the first time and whether it is this masterpiece. Now it's worth noting, looking at this, look at the audience's list though. Rose's scabbard, Mr. Greg, Lion 3 straight to video, Sworn to the Sword, and Jailbreak. With the exception of maybe Jailbreak, those are all Pearl-centric stories. And particularly...
Yeah, and
I suppose Pearl and Rose, I should say, because Lion 3 is a Rose thing, isn't it? But it's a Rose-Greg thing at the end. But yeah, there's a theme here. And Rose's scabbard really seems to have been a masterpiece for a lot of people. And we just didn't see it that way. Again, we didn't hate it. I don't think our review was scathing. We were just simply like, yeah, this is good, but not great.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't really remember the discussion, which, so I'd have to...
I don't either. So, with that in mind, Chris, is that what we're deciding? Are we doing it as the next episode? I mean, I'm springing this on you. We haven't had the discussion.
No. I think that's a great idea. I think that's the best way to do it. Justice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering now. Hold on. Let me just have a quick look. I can't. I wondered if like the comments were particularly, but I can't find the video quickly because I think I've spelled scabbard wrong. Okay. Yeah. No. I think that's a great idea.
There you go. So I mean.
Oh wow! We only talked about it for 24 minutes.
Yeah. Well, back then we were doing shorter episodes anyway. This is just before we just
no, but even so,
yeah. So
yeah.
What we've decided then essentially is that we will talk about that episode, but not today. We're gonna do it properly. We're gonna do it justice. You guys put it as your number one. That says something, and it says that we need to take a look at this. And while it was like the 45th episode, and we've been doing the revisits in order up to like we've gone up to like episode 15 or 16. We're going to jump forward and then maybe jump back if we do more of them going forward, and check out Rose's scabbard, so we can do it justice.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout.
There you go.
That was good. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. It's fun to think about these things, even if it's like, I think it's, you know what I've decided, it's more fun to think about these things when you don't try to do it too mathematically, which is what I did for the last 2 top 5 episodes we did.
Yeah, because I think things like Ocean Gem
Yes.
would have, because Ocean Gem was a look on the list and go, oh yeah. And I think if I'd have put too much thought into it, Ocean Gem, I might have been like, oh, it's pretty epic. Our first time of being epic. So there's some amazing Lapis stuff. You do really love Lapis as a character. Maybe you should put Ocean Gem on the list. But actually, I had more personal stuff to say about Gemcation, Keystone Motel, Last One Out of Beach City. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think instinct, and then going, well, why? What's the connection? Like I said, for me, the thing was, I was like, oh man, but that's the thing. Like, I looked at my list and I'm like, I'd have been surprised by the names on it, but then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of Greg and there's a lot of love stuff, and I'm like, fathers and love. I write and talk about those things all the time. The content surrounding those things always like connect with me, so it's not surprising at all.
Yeah, no, I totally, I agree. Like we could have done it more didactically maybe, but I don't think it would have been as interesting rather than doing it with personal stuff. And you know, the episodes like Mindful Education obviously as well, like I've already gushed about in our episode and talked about why that was so personally impactful. So it was also, I didn't want to repeat myself, so I kept trying to keep it as brief as I could, which probably still failed to do, but I tried, and that's important.
Yeah.
So I mean, there we go. It's a great show, ton of great episodes. What a nice feeling it is to know that like there's I guess that's the lesson we've learned today, Chris, is that there are so many great episodes of Steven Universe. 3 different groups can come up with 3 completely different lists for their top sort of 10 episodes, except for Mr. Greg, which we all agree is number 2.
What we've learned is the startling revelation that Mr. Greg, pretty good episode.
Yeah. Everyone agrees Mr. Greg is basically the second favourite episode. That's weird. Everyone has one episode above Mr. Greg, but otherwise it's Mr. Greg.
And incredibly, even though the like looking at the comments and stuff on the Rose's Scabbard and stuff, which I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, by the way. You said that at the time. Even though it's a group of people, it's still very like personal to the fans because you know it's universally seen as a fan favorite. So like it just 3 incredibly. It's so funny to me that like it's like Mr. Greg, incredible, and here are my personal reasons why this is my favorite. Which says a lot about the quality of Mr. Greg because it's like you take personal preference out of it. Mr. Greg is still incredibly high for everyone.
Yeah, and I find it so interesting that like you know. What's really surprising about this, with Mr. Greg aside for a second, all of our number 1s don't then appear in our top 5, in anyone else's top 5. Reunited
in anyone else's top 10.
Well, no, because Mindful Education,
is
in the audience's 9. Yeah, but I mean, so with that exception aside, if we go to top 5, like Mindful Education doesn't appear in your list or the audience list. Reunited doesn't appear in my list or the audience's list, and Rose's Scabbard doesn't appear in yours or my top 5 either. So like that's pretty amazing. Like the fact there's such diversity across the number 1 picks, but also such consistency. With the number 2, that is kind of remarkable. Wow, what a fascinating situation. So I'll try to post some more stats in the Discord if people want like the full like how it's like. Maybe I'll post the full order of the 174 ranked episodes in the Discord or on Twitter or something. But yeah, there we go. I had a ton of fun doing this one. I thank you guys. I thank everyone who took the time to help rank their episodes on the SurveyMonkey site. I know it's not the best. I probably won't use them again because they try to charge me once I actually wanted to do stuff with the data. What's the point of letting me get the data for free if you're going to try and charge me, a con artist?
That's business, baby.
Oh, scandalous. Scandalous.
Cool.
But that is everything for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. All the usual places, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you want to send us a little email. We do read them all. We don't always reply. Sorry about that. It's worth adding that because we haven't said that in a little while, but it is true. If we don't reply, it doesn't mean we haven't read it or enjoyed your email. It just means we haven't had the time to reply. YouTube.com/nothingbutstaticuk if you want to subscribe now, ahead of the launch of teased new content that will be coming quite soon. Also, for those of you looking, Rewind reviews will be back, but just not for a couple of months because we're going to get this new content launched first. Then we're going to take a break in the new content once we've gotten to like 20, I think we said, and then we'll do another set of 10 Rewind reviews. So if you're into that, stick around. For those who don't know what Rewind reviews is, we review old movies. It's really fun. You can also get us in all the usual places. So we're on like iTunes and Google Play, and we're now on Amazon. There's a little window right now on Amazon for you guys to actually make a really big difference before all of the podcasts are on it, because not everyone has immediately jumped on it as a platform. They will in the coming weeks, but right now there's less competition. So you might actually be able to make us go up and exist in the charts where we're more visible if you go on Amazon right now, rate, review, whatever option they give you. I've not looked at the Amazon one yet. I assume there's a rating system. So please go do that if you can. What else we got? Oh yeah, we're on Twitter at Dan Doolan, at C Billingham for Chris with 2 M's. And I think that covers us. Oh,
yeah,
Patreon.
I think so.
Oh, Patreon. Patreon.com/nothingButStatic, where you'll be able to get the brand new content a week early, as well as Rewind reviews once we start launching it. It'll be available there a week ahead of its release on audio and YouTube platforms for our lovely patrons. For as little as $1 a month, you can have access to that. So that's pretty cool, isn't it, Chris? Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's great. It's good stuff.
It's good. I'm happy.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I'm hoping that right now we're a little dry on that, and it always terrifies me because every time we start releasing content on that on Patreon, people always remember that they're Patreon. So we always lose patrons when we start launching content over there, which is like, oh no, what a shame. But yeah, it's fine. No,
a fair few people go, I'm supporting that. Oh no.
yeah. It always makes me laugh that happens. But hopefully we'll gain some new ones ahead of that in excitement for our new content, which we will be revealing. Let's put it this way. We will confirm what our new project is on the next episode of Steven University. How's that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. A couple of weeks from now, we'll be closer to launch. And for those of you wondering why the secrecy, like, well, why does anyone care? It's just we didn't want to promote something that wasn't coming out anytime soon. We wanted to get a bunch of episodes ahead. We wanted to get 10 episodes ahead before we released anything. And we've decided between us that there was no point in telling people that it existed until it was actually close to release, because otherwise that's just hype for nothing's sake, you know. Not hype, but you know what I mean. Like people, anybody that might be excited about that podcast would be then waiting for a long time for it to exist. Yeah. So
we wanted to be able to go, it's coming, and then it actually be coming soon.
Yeah. Because we've been recording these for months now. Like we're like 7 in. So once we get to 10 or 11ish, we'll probably start releasing. So we will announce what it is exactly on the next episode of this. So come back in a week's time for that. But in the meantime, I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll come back in 2 weeks' time, as we'll be discussing, finally, Rosa Scabbard.